Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email, by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal, or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone, including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
Our presenter today is Stella Villa. Stella has worked at Grayson College since 2019. She has held a variety of roles in adult education and literacy, including her current position as an English as a second language instructor. Stella has also assisted with student intake and registration, testing students, and teaching adult basic education classes. Coupled with a business and master's degree, Ms. Villa combines her passions for literacy, public speaking, and helping the students she serves. Stella also uses her service leader mindset to consult for nonprofits and develop projects close to her heart.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Welcome everyone to Civic Online Reasoning Part 2. We are here for Civic Online Reasoning Part 2. Here are two quotes that I think embody what Civic Online Reasoning is about. Read not to contradict and confute, nor to believe and take for granted, nor to find talk, discourse, but to weigh and consider. This is by Sir Francis Bacon, who's best well known for advocating the scientific method at a time that really conflicted with scientists. They didn't really agree with what he said. And the second quote is, healthy skepticism is the basis of all accurate observation. This is by Arthur Conan Doyle. You may recognize him as the creator of Sherlock Holmes. And again, we want to encourage our students and all individuals to weigh and consider and evaluate perspectives from different sides so that they can decide whether or not something is trustworthy. Let's review the objectives for today. We're going to delve deeper into the core 3 critical questions. We'll improve lateral reading understanding through practice, so you all will be able to practice along with me. And we'll probe proving claims by applying principles of COR or Civic Online Reasoning. You'll probably hear me say COR a lot, and that refers to Civic Online Reasoning. As a review, what is Civic Online Reasoning? It is a free curriculum from the Stanford University History Group that uses targeted questions and lesson plans that help students evaluate online information. And it is research-based. How can we use COR? COR recognizes that there are limitations to vertical reading, and really they have come up with the term lateral reading, which is opening up a new tab to search the broader web. It seems kind of counterintuitive to leave the initial website and go outside of that, but it really does work, as has proven through the research observing the fact checkers. And by doing this, we can make better informed decisions after discovering verifiable information. This is a review. We talked about the navigation menu and the navigation bar that includes the research and curriculum and lessons and videos. And today we're going to also include assessments. We didn't have a chance to do that in part 1 because that was saved for part 2. Here are the 3 critical questions. Who's behind the info? What does the evidence say? And what do others say? This is the heart of the core curriculum. There is the screenshot of Civic Online Reasoning, and it says that students are confused about how to evaluate online information. We all are. The core curriculum provides free lessons and assessments that help you teach students to evaluate online information that affects them, their communities, and the world. We want to go over some of the civics content standards that this core curriculum can help our students. We can help them become and stay informed. And I'm not going to read all of this, but under sub-area standard E, we can help them interpret and analyze and use diverse sources of info, including personal experiences, and really under the benchmarks, distinguish between fact and fiction and consider the role of and influence of media. Who's behind the information?
Guiding questions. Who is the author? Who produced the content? What is the author's motivation? Are there conflicts of interest? Who are the companies behind the info? Where is the funding coming from? What is the author's perspective? Is it advertising? Is it sponsored content? Is it an opinion?
These are some of the guiding questions that we talked about in part 1 that are included in the lesson plans for the teacher and are also included in the source for the students. And these are the questions that we're going to keep in mind. The two main questions are going to be who's behind the information and what is the motivation. Sometimes all individuals might be taken in by an impressive website, or maybe there are some graphics that have taken us to another place. Maybe there are charts there and they look like they're official because they're so confusing. We might even recognize one of the logos, or we might think that the URL is definitely something that's going to prove that the source is legitimate. Sometimes these are the pitfalls that many of us might encounter, and these are some assumptions that we want to caution our students against, because sometimes you can't tell about the URLs. In fact, domains aren't what they seem. .org is a domain that anyone can register, and .com in the past was used for commercial use, but now is open to other uses. So really, it's up to us to investigate. Here's the menu bar that we were talking about that I showed you in my screenshot. At the top, we have curriculum, what's at stake, videos, research, my favorite button, the center button. Whenever you are deep in the website, you can always tap on that, and that will bring you back to this original page. Search the curriculum, sign in, and sign up. I want to move on into the viewing the curriculum collections. And here we're going to talk about teaching lateral reading. Teaching lateral reading. Evaluating where information comes from is a crucial part of deciding whether it is trustworthy. By observing fact checkers, we found the best way to learn about a website is lateral reading, or leaving a site to see what other digital sources say about it. Now we're going to practice a little bit of what we learned about lateral reading. What I want to do is I want to go back to my curriculum. And here in the middle, it tells you that under curriculum is included the lessons and the assessments and collections. If you go along with me, I'm going to tap on the lessons. And since we're on the first question, who's behind the information? Let's start at the beginning. And I'm going to select only who's behind the information. Going to the second card, intro to who's behind the information.
Intro to who's behind the information. Since information is always influenced by its author, analyzing who's behind the information should be a priority when evaluating online content. But too often, students attempt to evaluate information based on elements other than the source, such as the contents of a website, its appearance, or the evidence it supplies. In this lesson, students learn why the source of information is so important and practice analyzing information based on who's behind it.
Notice we have the option of either level 1 or level 2. And I also want to point out that you can get free classroom posters to have for your classroom. Let's look into level 1. We're going to tap on the teacher materials. The setup is the same as a review. We have the question, intro to who's behind the information. There is our essential question. We have the problem, the lesson, the materials, and then it walks you through a script of what can be suggested. But you want to preview this script and you don't have to say it word for word, obviously. But at the bottom, under the number 2, these are all the questions that we talked about generating. I want to go to the source of this. So if we look at this, we'll see that this is an article that's at the top. We can see that it's at the Washington Post. We'll also notice that on the left, it has a notation, the WP Creative Group, and then the content is from the Embassy of Japan. This is promoting the National Cherry Blossom Festival. And based on what we've talked about so far, we want to question who is the author, what is the motivation, who is the funding from, and all of those questions that we had somebody read. We want to know what the perspective is. The first part is going to be, let's look and see what's behind this I. It tells us that this is paid content by an advertiser and published by the WP Creative Group. So why would the Embassy of Japan want to pay for this article? Again, we have to wonder, what is behind the motivation? Do I really think that this article is going to give me a balanced perspective? This is from the content of from the Embassy of Japan, and certainly the Embassy of Japan is well positioned to talk about the National Cherry Blossom Festival. But again, do I really think that I'm going to get the full story? Probably not. This is just an introduction into the lesson, but these are the questions that you would guide your student through as a facilitator to get them to think about who's behind the information and why motivation is so important. We're going to do a demonstration that shows the limitations of vertical reading and how you can get more information using lateral reading. Basically, it tells you that to make judgments based on features such as the URL, the design, the functionality, or the content really is not getting the complete picture. These features are not effective ways to evaluate a site and need to be explicitly challenged. Let's look at that. At the top, it says Environmental Policy Alliance. And then we're scrolling through it and it looks really professional. So I might think this looks pretty legit. It must be a source that I can trust. I'm looking and I see a list of other organizations that seem to back up this article. So I'm wondering, this must really be important. And all these people seem to concur with whatever this article is about. And as I look at the second paragraph, I'm noticing that there is a nonpartisan report from the Government Accountability Office, or the GAO. Well, I definitely recognize that as a reputable organization. However, we still don't know who's behind the Environmental Policy Alliance. We still don't know what the motivation is, and we really don't know who funded this. And all of those questions are still hanging in the balance. Let's look and see what we can find when we do a lateral search. So I'm going to open a new tab, and I'm going to look in. I can do environmental Policy Alliance. And then I might even start off with Wikipedia, because that's a good place to launch your research. And I'm just looking through here, and now I at least have some information on the Environmental Policy Alliance. I would definitely do more exploration, but in the interest of time, I just want to show you that the lateral search will give you more information, okay? We can look and see what articles come up. Again, it tells you that this is the Environmental Policy Alliance. It's devoted to uncovering the funding and hidden agendas behind environmental activist groups and so on. Okay. But you can see that now you have at least some way to find more information. And what we want to do is we want to scroll through all the results and just evaluate this more completely. I would definitely explore this PR firm, Furman and Company. So this PR firm, this is an advertising agency that's behind this policy alliance. So you can see how doing a lateral search will yield more information. And kind of a recap, we're looking at the core lessons. Question number 1, who's behind the info? We talked about where's the funding coming from? Is it an opinion or is it advertising? Who produced the content? Are there conflicts of interest? We know that we're going to investigate the URLs and not just take it for granted that it must be legit. And we demonstrated that we can get more information when we do lateral reading.
What does the evidence say? Analyze. Analyze evidence. Is it reliable? Is the source trustworthy? Is the evidence relevant to the claim being made? Analyze the evidence. Does the evidence directly relate to the claim? Is there additional evidence you need to be fully convinced?
We are going to evaluate photos, and I'm going to show you a technique that the fact checkers use, which is called the reverse image. This will give us information on whether or not this photo is original. It will tell us the location. It will give us information if there are other stories attached to this photo. Here is a procedure for doing a photo image search. We're going to open a separate tab that's going to be images.google.com. We're going to go back to our source photo. We will right-click on it, go down the menu where it says copy image. We're going to drag the image into our images.google.com tab that we've established. And then it should come up with the results for possible sites where this picture has been used. I'm going to go to my lessons. I'm going to only focus on question 2, so I can just tap on what's the evidence. And at this point, I want to do card 2. intro to what's the evidence, and I'm going to access the level 1 lesson. Again, we have the problem, the short lesson, and then under materials, here is the source. I'm going to open up the source. Evaluating evidence. Given the vast amount of information available online, students need to be able to distinguish between legitimate and dubious evidence. This is an assessment that measures whether students can evaluate evidence when it takes the form of a vivid photograph. Let's try doing this. So there is our photo that claims that these mutated daisies are a result from the Fukushima nuclear fallout. I want to open up a separate tab, and I'm going to go and I'm going to write images.google.com. And when I access that, you have this little window that has the microphone and the camera. And then I'm going to go back to my source, and I'm going to right click on the photo until the menu comes up, copy image. Then I'm going to select copy image, get this symbol, find my window that has googleimages.com, select the camera, and at the very bottom, drag the image here and release, and then it should be uploaded. So now we can see that apparently this photo has been, or similar photos have been taken all over the world. What we want to do is we want to access the find the image source. We can do find the image source, and now we can see that the Smithsonian has picked this up and says, don't freak out over the funky flowers that appeared near the Fukushima plant. In the interest of time, I'm just going to share with you, there are several articles that say this is a natural occurrence called fasciation and is not necessarily about the Fukushima plant. And especially since you can see that same effect in different parts of the United States, the claim is not backed up by this photo. Here are the questions over the reverse image. Again, is there additional evidence that might convince me otherwise? Is the source reliable? Are there stories attached to the evidence? We saw that there were other stories attached to this evidence. And then, is the source trustworthy? Again, in the interest of time, there were some references from the National Geographic website that discussed that this is fasciation. There was the resource from Smithsonian that also said that this does not necessarily mean that this was from the nuclear fallout. And it cautions again to really explore whether or not this claim could be backed up. Moving on to videos, we would do the same thing. Data, evaluating evidence and data. Is it relevant? Does it directly speak to the claim? And is it reliable? Evaluating the evidence in videos. Is it unaltered? Is it the original length? And has it been used out of context? Again, there is this lesson in the core curriculum that shows a USDA official that was fired because her 45-minute speech was spliced and diced to fit the needs of whatever the group was to fit their purpose. And because her 45-minute speech was cut down to less than 2 minutes, because it was taken out of context, she lost her job. The end story is she was able to gain back her position. The point is that we thought anyone that's looking at the video, it's not our first inclination to wonder, is this the entire video? Has this been altered? Has this been used out of context? And when we invite our students to use this core curriculum, we're going to encourage our students to start asking about that, especially because so much news is now on social media. And again, we don't have the time to really decide, or we don't have the time to investigate it. And we probably think that we shouldn't have to, but it is incumbent upon us to decide whether or not something is legitimate or if it's fact or fiction. Evaluating the evidence, we can start our search in wikipedia.com. Sometimes some people might say, oh, Wikipedia, that's not very reliable. But in fact, it's an excellent place to launch our research because the wealth of the information is at the bottom of the page when you see all the references. And the references have to be supported from an outside source. In addition, many Wikipedians, that's what they're called, the people that have access to Wikipedia are limited, and most of the pages are locked. So that would be something else to look for while you're doing your research. Is this particular page locked? And then look at the bottom to look at the references and then explore some of the references. That's where we got the information on Richard Berman in our other example that in fact showed us that he is connected to a PR firm, which is advertising and not really necessarily news. We need to encourage our students to wonder, is the evidence relevant? Does the evidence speak directly to the claim? Has the evidence been altered? This is really important to really understand that something that was 45 minutes and was cut down to less than 2 minutes, it's not in our inclination to think that that would happen, but sometimes it does. And then, has the evidence been used out of context? We're going to move on to what does the evidence say regarding social media. We need to encourage our students to recognize that any search engine that you use will be driven by an algorithm. So the placement of whatever you are researching, if you think that the first entry that comes up, oh, that must be the best entry, that's not necessarily true because it's the search engine that decides what is the placement of it. So again, we must investigate the account behind the post. We need to investigate any linked source, and we certainly need to investigate the claim. Here are the review questions. What does the evidence say? We were able to do a photo reverse image. We understand now that there are some videos that can be cut to meet a special purpose. And we know that we can use Wikipedia as a launching pad to start our research because of the valuable resources at the bottom of the page. We also know that the search engine computes the algorithms. Our third question is, what do other sources say? We want to consider introduction to what do other sources say, a good video for educators to preview how to find better information by using click restraint. We're going to talk about click restraint and verify claims on social media. Select curriculum, go into the lessons, and I'm focusing on the third question, what do other sources say? I want to find click restraint. And here it says, when we have a question or are searching for sources, we likely turn to a search engine to help us find answers. We often click on the first result, perhaps because sifting through all the results takes time, or because we assume the first result is the most trustworthy. But the first result is not always the best place to start. Spending a little more time scanning search results can help us make a more informed choice about where to go first. This is another technique that fact checkers use. They don't just go to the first result. They don't go to the second result. They scan all the results. For example, what if we heard that China buys Walmart? Well, here is a sample of some of the articles that might come up. And what fact checkers do is that they question, is China buying Walmart? We would definitely go through and look at the title. We would look at the URL, Quora. Maybe in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm not quite sure if Quora is all that reputable. We would definitely look at the snippets or the small bits of information there. And I would look to see if there's information that's going to give me a balanced viewpoint. Even looking at this, Rob Walton sells Walmart shares. Again, this is going to be the owner of Walmart, and maybe that's not going to be the best place where I want to get a balanced viewpoint of whatever topic I'm doing. I want to go back and get out of this. How relevant is it to your search? The search engine's ranking of the site's quality actually determines that. Here we are responsible for this, right? We'll look at the title. We'll look at the URL. We'll read the little snippet. And here's an interesting lesson within a lesson. This is about school uniform policies. And just to drive home the point that we need to question who's behind the information and what's the motivation. If we're looking for a balanced viewpoint, and in this case, uniforms, and we're looking for information to be trustworthy, I'm going to try to make this bigger for you. If you're looking at number 4, this is from Vogue, and the title says the best school uniforms, and it's by Vogue. I would wonder, what is the motivation behind Vogue doing this? Obviously, because they want to sell school uniforms that they promote at, I'm sure, a more expensive cost than any of the others. Again, the point is we need to question who's behind the information and what is the motivation. And even as we're looking through the scanning of the articles, we can make a prediction and think, these are the initial results that I have come across, and then check to see whether or not you think it's going to be reasonably trustworthy, and then explore and find out whether they are. The next lesson that I want to go to, verifying claims on social media. I'm looking at verifying claims on social media. Social media is designed to allow users to freely post claims and evidence. And it goes on to tell you that basically anyone can post anything and not have to back it up. For example, this is in the lesson, and the claim is that NASA spent $165 million to develop an ink pen that worked in zero gravity while Russians used a pencil. When I first look at this, the first thing that came to me was develop is spelled differently. So I would consider that. I don't know who Harry Douglas is. I can do a search on him and find out more information on him. I don't know about this Harry Talks Today. Why is he claiming that NASA had this unbelievable amount of money? Just questions that we may not be first inclined to ask. Yes, social media is powerful, popular, and different from previous forms of media. It allows us to interact and share information quickly and easily, and it creates groups of people with common views and interests. These are all the wonderful things about social media. But we also need to make sure that we ensure that the stories we read and share are accurate. And features that make social media fun and easy to use may also make it difficult to verify information. I think they have the techniques. We can do a Wikipedia search, we can do a reverse image search, and I think that they understand the questions behind it. We will go ahead and look at one assessment, the news search. And here we have two articles from the same source. One of them is the opinion section, and one of them is in the news section. And just so that you get a taste of what the assessment would be like, viewing the assessment, this is what the student would get to question whether or not the first source is reliable or the second source. It gives you examples of what is considered mastery. The student that masters this information is going to be one that's able to justify it, an emerging student, and a beginning student.
We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded webinar. After you have passed the final test with a score of 80% or greater and have received your certificate of completion, please take a few moments to complete the course evaluation. Participant feedback helps Train PD at TCOL continue to provide high-quality professional development. To leave a course feedback, please go to the completed portion of your transcript. To do this, hover over the My Learning tab and select View Your Transcript. Click on the drop-down arrow next to the word Active and select Completed. Then, click Evaluate in the drop-down menu next to the course you just completed. Please note that your feedback is greatly appreciated.